Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 9 wide receiver start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the wide receivers in every single matchup. But before we can get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to go down below and hit that like button to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 9 wide receiver start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football between the New York Jumbo Jets at the Indianapolis Colts, a coveted quarterback matchup between Mike White and Carson Wentz. I know when the schedule came out for the NFL in the offseason, everyone was just so excited. They circled this game in a huge red marker because everyone was so pumped for Mike White versus Carson Wentz. Obviously, no one was excited for Mike White because no one knew who Mike White was. And surprisingly, Mike White looked really good up against the Cincinnati Bengals last week. Now, do I believe that Mike White will look really good in this game? To me, probably not. This game screams from the mountaintops that this is going to be a humongous letdown game for the Jumbo Jets. They come off of an on-fire win up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are thought of as one of the best teams in the AFC, and then they got knocked down a peg by the Jets. But obviously, that was a very shocking win. I think a lot of people are going to look for them to repeat here and beat up against the Indianapolis Colts, but I believe the Colts are going to roll the Jets. But even with that said, I still do believe that Jamison Crowder will be a start-worthy wide receiver. He is a strictly volume play in PPR and half PPR leagues because you are going to be hinging on the fact that he's going to be seeing a bunch of targets in this game with Mike White under center. I am confident enough in the quarterback play for me to think Jamison Crowder is worthy of a start. For the Indianapolis Colts last week, I was really high on Michael Pittman on the start-sit video for the wide receivers. I was really talking up Michael Pittman because I feel as though this guy is the clear #1 wide receiver on the Indianapolis Colts, and he has such a good rapport with Carson Wentz that he was going to have a great game. And then as the week went on, it came out that T.Y. Hilton was going to play. And then I got relatively nervous because when T.Y. Hilton did play, he was siphoning targets away from Michael Pittman, and that was really hurting Michael Pittman. And I got nervous, and I was like, you know what? I'll still start Michael Pittman, but I'm not going to rank him as highly as I probably would have earlier on in the week, and that was a fatal fucking mistake because T.Y. Hilton plays in the game. He doesn't do all that much. He's not playing this week. Michael Pittman is the clear #1 wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to try to never second guess this motherfucker again. Even when T.Y. Hilton is healthy, there is no reason to rank Michael Pittman lowly. This guy is an absolute fucking beast game in and game out, and I expect him to have an amazing game up against the Jumbo Jets defense. I will be sitting down Corey Davis as well as Zach Pascal. Corey Davis is an interesting start, but again, I really do believe this is going to be a letdown game for the Jets offense, so I'm not too sure how Corey Davis will play because he doesn't really get the same amount of sheer target volume that a guy like Crowder gets. And then for Zach Pascal, he's certainly an interesting play, but at the end of the day, I just don't trust him anywhere near as close as I trust Michael Pittman, and there are other ancillary wide receivers on the Indianapolis Colts team that could take away targets from Zach Pascal. Now we move to the Sunday slated games with the Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. It seems as though Calvin Ridley is going to be stepping away for some time. How long is that going to be? I am not too sure. I wish the best for Calvin Ridley. Obviously, what he is dealing with is terrible. I hope that Calvin Ridley is okay, so we're not going to be talking about him in today's video. If it does come out that he ends up playing, then obviously I will talk about him in the rankings video, but I highly doubt he is going to be playing this week. So that leaves us with Russell Gage, with Tajae Sharpe. If I'm being honest with you, I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to be able to keep up with the New Orleans Saints in this game, and they could potentially beat the New Orleans Saints. But you want to know how they're going to beat the New Orleans Saints or keep up in this game? It's with Cordero Patterson and it's with Kyle Pitts. It is not with Russell fucking Gage, who put up a goose egg, a bagel, a big fat 0 in their game last week. Everyone's like, oh wow, Calvin Ridley's out. Now let's all pivot to Russell Gage. It made sense, but it didn't work at all. There is no way I'm ever playing Russell Gage again. That man has tricked me one too many times, but I guess it was Halloween, so I guess I did end up deserving that tricking or the treat, but it wasn't much of a treat at all if you played Russell Gage. That was a stupid fucking joke. I understand. Tajay Sharp, he's the other option there. I don't really want to trust it up against the Saints defense. Then we got Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith. I honestly believe that without famous Jameis, eat a W Winston, steal a crab Winston under center, this is going to be a much more run-heavy offense for the New Orleans Saints with Taysom Hill under center, and that does worry me, so there's no way I want to be trusting Marquez Callaway or Traquan Smith, because the upside of that one deep ball soaring their way and them catching it from Jameis Winston is virtually gone with Taysom Hill under center. Next up, we got the Denver Broncos at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys coming off of an amazing win with Cooper Rush as their starting quarterback to beat the Minnesota Vikings. The Broncos, they're just a snoozer of a team. I don't really like the Broncos at all. But with that said, Jerry Jeudy made his return last week. Everyone got down on their knees. They were gawking Jerry Jeudy, thinking he was going to come back and instantly make this lasting impression. The guy didn't really do anything. Does that mean that he's going to be shit for the rest of the season? Of course not. It will take some time for Jerry Jeudy to get reinvigorated into this offense. But as a whole, I don't really like the Broncos offense. I really don't. It is very scary every single week because Teddy Bridgewater really isn't all that good at all. There's a reason why they traded away Von Miller. It's because they do not believe in the Broncos offense at all. So they said, fuck it, let's get rid of Von Miller. Let's just lose out. Whatever's going to happen here, this team is terrible. We'll just wait until next year. So Jerry Jeudy does really scare me. So I'm not playing him here up against the Dallas Cowboys. Courtland Sutton, on the other hand, I'm fine playing, but his upside is certainly limited because of the fact that Teddy Bridgewater never really looks good unless they're playing up against really bad teams. For the Dallas Cowboys, we saw CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper look really solid with Cooper Rush under center, so I assume they're going to look really solid with Dakota Prescott back under center. I expect CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper to both have top 5 upside on the week. Would not be surprised at all if one of them were the #1 wide receiver when the week came to a close. Next up, we move to a matchup between the Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. In this game, I'm going to be firing up Jakobi Meyers, but I've basically lost all hope of talking myself into the fact that Jakobi Meyers is just magically going to score one of these weeks. At this point, the upside for Jakobi Meyers is not that high because he's just a safe play. He's a guy that gets a bunch of targets. He's going to get a bunch of receptions. He's going to get like 80, 90 yards, but he doesn't really have the upside to be a 20-plus point wide receiver weekly because the motherfucker is just allergic to scoring. He simply cannot score, and it is so annoying every single week because I always try to talk myself into the fact that, hey, this is the game that the Patriots, that Mac Jones, finally get Jakobi Meyers to score a touchdown. And it would make sense, right? Eventually, when you just don't score so many times in a row, you're just bound to find your way into the end zone because you are a guy that is so heavily used on the team. But it's just not happening. It's just not happening for Jakobi Meyers, so I'm not going to talk myself into the fact that he's going to score. He's still a start-worthy wide receiver, but he's not a guy that I ever really see finishing inside the top 12, top 18, top 20 on the week because he simply cannot score. For the Carolina Panthers, mono man Sam Darnold just hasn't looked great aside from those first couple of games of the season, and that does really hurt DJ Moore, but DJ Moore is still a guy that is being targeted heavily, and I do believe that Sam Darnold will eventually turn it around. So I don't think you should really turn your back on DJ Moore. I'm firing him up every single week for the Carolina Panthers. The other players in this game, we got Robbie Anderson, the island boy himself. If you guys know what I'm talking about, that TikTok song where the guy's just like, I'm an island boy, and he has this really weird hairdo. Robbie Anderson has the exact same haircut. I tweeted out a couple of days ago that Robbie Anderson should be an island boy for Halloween because he just has the exact same haircut. Very funny. Robbie Anderson might as well be just a fucking TikTok guy because this guy doesn't put up any points. He gets the targets. He does nothing with them. It is shocking to me still that we are 9 weeks into the season and Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson just don't have a connection. They used to have that fucking 5G LTE connection. Now they don't even have one bar. It doesn't make any sense. Robbie Anderson is doing nothing, so you can't trust him. Nelson Aguilar, he's the other option for the Patriots. It seems like maybe he is a better bet to score every single week for the New England Patriots, but he just does not see the same amount of receiving volume as Jakobi Meyers. Nelson Aguilar, to me, going up against the Carolina Panthers, I do not want anything to do with that because I do think that the Panthers have a sneaky, really good defense. Next up, we got the Minnesota Vikings at the Baltimore Ravens, who are coming off of a horrific loss. A horrific loss up against the Dallas Cowboys. How the fuck do you lose to a guy named Cooper Rush? That is beyond me. Justin Jefferson doesn't do anything in that game. He's banged up. It is what it is, but if he returns this week and he does play, I'm going to play him because Justin Jefferson is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. We shouldn't have expected too much out of the Minnesota Vikings in that game because Kirk Cousins sucks on primetime. Kirk Cousins is the king of losing football games on primetime. So obviously, some way, Justin Jefferson is just going to have a bad game. But I do believe he could bounce back up against the Baltimore Ravens. Adam Thielen was successful in that game. Adam Thielen's value hinges so heavily on scoring that touchdown. But unlike Jakobi Meyers, this man just magically scores a touchdown or two every single game. So when you play Adam Thielen, you're obviously rooting for that touchdown this week up against the Baltimore Ravens. Hollywood Brown is going to be a start for me in this game. Hollywood Brown is not really all that risky of a player in my opinion. Sure, he's had like 2 down games on the season, especially that one big game up against the Detroit Lions where everyone expected the Ravens to just beat them down. Hollywood Brown drops 2, not 1, but 2 wide open touchdowns. The ball just hits him right in the fucking hand 2 times, and he doesn't catch it. In my opinion, though, going up against the Minnesota Vikings, this could be a very solid spot for him coming off of the bye. Rashad Bateman is the other option for the Baltimore Ravens, and unless you are in a deeper kind of a league, I just don't think Rashad Bateman is really worthy of a start. I really do believe Hollywood Brown is the clear #1 wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Next up, we move to the Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals, but before we break this game down, I would like to ask if you have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you are new, and whether you are new or not, please make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So we got the Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. There was so much talk about Odell Beckham Jr. wanting to get traded, about how Odell Beckham Jr. was going to get shipped away from the Cleveland Browns because the Cleveland Browns don't know how to use him. Him and Baker Mayfield don't have all that great of a connection. Things aren't going great, and I agree. Things aren't going great for Odell Beckham Jr. I believe, unless this report was just fake, that his dad was talking about how he wants Odell to be traded from the Cleveland Browns, and nothing came of that, sadly, because to me, it would have been hilarious to see him go to another team. Because I honestly think that Odell just isn't as good as he used to be, so Odell would have struggled on that new team just like he's struggling in Cleveland. Now, I understand that Baker Mayfield isn't feeding him the rock as much as he would want, but the reason why that doesn't happen is because the Cleveland Browns are a run-heavy system. They want to pound the ball down the throat of their opponents, and that is how they win games. But Nick, that didn't work up against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. I understand that didn't work last week, but that's their game plan. That's how they win the games. It's by running the rock aggressively, and Odell Beckham Jr., he's not a running back. You don't want to be starting him. Same thing goes with Jarvis Landry. Odell Beckham Jr., every single year, people are getting fucking hoodwinked into drafting this guy. Please, if you drafted Odell Beckham Jr. this year, I hope you realize the great mistake you have made, and you don't do it next year, but people are going to continue to get on their knees and give him the fucking gawk 9,000 suck his cock special, where he's going to move all the way up to the 5th round again, and it's going to be a huge swing and a miss, just like it is every single year. So Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be a sit for me in this matchup. Same thing goes with Jarvis Landry. For the Cincinnati Bengals, I will be starting Ja'Marr Chase as well as Mr. T. Higgins. Ja'Marr Chase is, you know how Jakobi Meyers are talking about how that man's allergic to the end zone? Ja'Marr Chase is like a magnet. He is just magnetized to finding his way into the end zone, despite the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals didn't play all that great up against the Jets, right? They wish they could have had that one back because I think 99% of the time they beat down on the Jets. That maybe last week was just a look-ahead game in their mind. They're like, you know what? We could just coast past the Jets. Let's look towards the Browns. That didn't really work too well, but I do believe that Ja'Marr Chase is basically a top 5 wide receiver game in and game out at this point. You're going to fire him up every single week. So Ja'Marr Chase is an obvious start. For T. Higgins, he's been on, he's been off throughout the season, but going up against the Cleveland Browns, I do believe this will be a huge bounce back game for the Bengals. So I like Mr. T. Higgins in this game. Tyler Boyd, he's kind of the odd man out when all 3 of them are starting, when Chase, Higgins, and Boyd are starting. I kind of sound like a broken record at this point because I say it every single week that when the other 2 are healthy, you can't really start Boyd, but it's true. A majority of the weeks, Chase and Higgins are going to have the good games, and Tyler Boyd is kind of just looking in through the window or something, wishing that was him over there balling out with T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. Next up, we move to the Buffalo Bills at the Jacksonville Jaguars. In this game, I'm going to be firing up Emmanuel Sanders, and I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit nervous to do so. I understand that he put up a fat 0 in your lineup last week up against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins defense actually looked great for the first half of the game. Then after the first half, the Bills kicked the fucking door open, FBI opened up, and took the Dolphins defense to Pound Town. With that said, Emmanuel Sanders didn't do anything. But do you really believe that in back-to-back weeks, Emmanuel Sanders is going to have a goose egg after Emmanuel Sanders has been so heavily involved in this Bills offense all season long? I don't think so. I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to get back on the saddle and play well again. Going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars is a very easy matchup for Emmanuel Sanders, so I expect him to have a solid game, a bounce-back game this week. Do not fret on Emmanuel Sanders. Stefon Diggs, obviously, that's a guy you're going to be starting every single week. Hasn't had the season that we all thought he could have. Hasn't had the season where he could potentially be the #1 wide receiver in fantasy football, but he's still not a guy that you are going to be benching. Cole Beasley has been much more involved as of recently for the Buffalo Bills. He was up against the Titans. He was last week up against the Miami Dolphins, so I'm definitely fine starting all 3 of the wide receivers for the Buffalo Bills, strictly because this matchup up against the Jaguars is just a wet dream. It's a cupcake matchup for these wide receivers. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, Marvin Jones is a start, but he's one of those, like, bottom-of-the-barrel guys. It's not because Marvin Jones is bad. It's just because the Jaguars are just throwing the fucking ball all over the place. They may be without James Robinson in this game, which is also kind of worrisome. Marvin Jones is a guy that I think is very talented. This just really isn't the correct situation for him. And Laviska Shenault, while a couple of weeks ago, Urban Meyer actually fucking cracked the code, cracked the puzzle on how to use Laviska Shenault, it just doesn't seem like Laviska Shenault is all that important in Urban Meyer's mind because Laviska Shenault simply just is not getting the rock enough. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at my Miami Dolphins. In this game, I'm going to fire up Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks stunk last game until the fourth quarter. The whole Texans team stunk until the fourth quarter because they did nothing, and then they just erupted like Mount fucking Vesuvius, and they finally figured out what to do in garbage time. Davis Mills and his huge-ass neck was throwing tugs in this game. Is Tyrod Taylor going to play? That is definitely up in the air, regardless of if it's Davis Mills or if it is going to be Tyrod Taylor, Mr. Tyrod Taylor in this game. I'm still playing Brandin Cooks again. He's not a guy that is going to be very high up in my rankings because there is the risks with the fact that the Houston Texans may just get murdered in this game, but I do think that the Dolphins defense just really isn't all that good, and the Texans will play all right enough for Brandin Cooks to have a relatively solid game, just like he did last week. Hopefully we're not biting our nails if we started him like last week to where we have to wait all the way into the fourth quarter for something to happen for him. For the Dolphins, Devontae Parker just seems like a must start at this point in the season. The guy is just such a favorite target for Mr. Tua Tagovailoa. He's just going to be fed the rock game in and game out. He seems to be a focal point for this offense, so you got to fire him up. Will Fuller, while I personally thought he was going to return this week, Brian Flores comes out, Coach Flores, and says that, hey, he's not going to practice this week. So we just push that comeback another week down the road, and it just sucks. Like, the guy stole $10 million fucking dollars from the Dolphins, is what it is. Start Devontae Parker. You can play Jalen Waddle as well. This is a pretty soft matchup for the Dolphins offense here. Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker, I expect to have solid games. Nico Collins looked pretty decent last week, but again, that's kind of more of a one-trick pony, a one-week thing. I don't think you guys want to really fall into the Nico Collins trap. This week up against the Dolphins, I hope the Dolphins defense looks good in this game, but it wouldn't surprise me if they played like absolute shit. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the New York Football Giants. The Raiders are going to be without Henry Ruggs for my assumption is the whole season. Henry Ruggs gets a DUI. Just a stupid thing to do. Just something that is so easy to not do. It's so easy to not drink and drive. It's so easy to call an Uber, to use Lyft, to call someone else. instead of getting in the car and driving drunk and potentially injuring someone as well as yourself. Do not drink and drive. I'm not trying to sit here and fucking preach some type of a message, right? These videos, they're about fantasy football. They're all about having fun. But at the end of the day, when something happens like this, you just have to understand that it's so easily preventable that I hope that you guys understand not to do that, not to drink and drive. And obviously, Henry Ruggs will be used as an example. Don't do that. Do not do that. Henry Ruggs, I don't even think he's going to play again in the NFL. I'll be honest, at least not for the next 2 years. So that's kind of my read on that. So they're going to be without Ruggs. So that means Renfrow would move into a more favorable spot. He was already the favorable wide receiver for the Raiders. He was getting a decent amount of targets game in and game out. I understand the Giants defense actually played somewhat solid up against the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football, but I think Hunter Renfrow is a safe and reliable guy game in and game out, so I'm going to play him. For the Giants, Shepard, Toney, both get banged up in that game up against the Chiefs. It seems like the Giants wide receiver core is made of fucking glass. All their star players, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, Saquon Barkley, they all just get fucking hurt. They're all made of glass, but at the end of the day, I'm still playing them if they're healthy because the upside is insane because Kadarius Toney is clearly the best wide receiver on the team, but the one thing I'm worrying about Kadarius Toney is that they didn't really use him in the first half last week. He did throw a nice ball. He threw a ball in that game, but they weren't using him all that much because he was banged up, I would assume. So I hope they give him more usage in this game up against the Raiders because the guy is immensely talented. Sterling Shepard, not as good in my opinion as Kadarius Toney, strictly based upon skill set, but Sterling Shepard is still used a decent amount in this offense, and I doubt we see Kenny G-Spot, Kenny Bones return in this game. For the Raiders, they also have Bryan Edwards. I think he's a very interesting waiver wire add with now them not having Henry Ruggs. But in this game, I don't think I want to be firing him up instantly. Next up, we move to the LA Chargers at the Philadelphia Eagles. In this one, for the Eagles, it seems like the game plan for the Eagles that actually works is to just run the ball gently down the stream. Nick Sirianni uncracked the fucking code. He figured out that, hey, maybe if we just run the football instead of not running the football for some reason. They were like running the ball like 4 times in the first half of games this season. Now they magically run the ball and they absolutely trounce the Detroit Lions. Will that same game plan work up against the Chargers? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. The Chargers don't have the greatest of run defenses. So, at the end of the day, I think they might use that similar game plan, and I'm starting to get really nervous about Jalen Hurts. I really am. I'm going to be talking about that in the quarterback start or sit decisions video. I'm going to tell you to start Jalen Hurts, but I'm starting to get scared. I'm starting to get petrified by the fact that maybe they're going to actually run the ball and start winning some football games, and then we don't see Jalen Hurts slinging it late in the fourth quarter to get all those garbage time points for your fantasy team. Devontae Smith, with that said, with them actually trying to establish the fucking run, I don't think you can trust Smith. So for the Chargers side of the ball, you're going to play Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. You play them every single week. Keenan Allen looked pretty solid last week. Mike Williams, not so much. But obviously, you're going to be playing both of these Chargers wide receivers. The Chargers offense is really good. Justin Herbert, the pervert, is really good. So there's really no reason to be sitting either of those guys. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Kansas City Chiefs. In this one, I'm firing up Davante Adams. My assumption is that Davante Adams is fine to go this week. So I'm playing him. You play Davante Adams every week. Then you look to the other side of the ball, the Kansas City Chiefs. Guess who you play every single week as well? Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was a chef's kiss magnifique play up against the New York Football Giants last week. Tyreek Hill is one of those guys that could win you your week every single week by his fucking self. He's a guy that all he needs is like 6 targets, can catch 4 balls, have 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's just how good Tyreek Hill is. He's a game-breaking wide receiver. Same thing could be said about Davante Adams as well. I love both of them in this game. You're definitely firing both of them up. For the other ancillary options outside of them, Mecole Hardman looked pretty solid on Monday Night Football. But again, week in and week out, how reliable is he? Because maybe this week we see more Travis Kelce. Because Kelce was shut down by the Giants. He didn't really get all that much usage. He didn't really play all that well. So my assumption is that Kelce has a much better game, thus kind of devaluing Mecole Hardman. For the Green Bay Packers, Randall Cobb will be a sit for me. But Nick, Randall Cobb looked really good last week up against the Arizona Cardinals. To me, I understand that he did. He played quite well. But to me, that is because they were obviously missing Davante Adams. If Davante Adams was there, I don't think we would have seen Randall Cobb have this explosive game. I think Randall Cobb is still fine, even in his old age. But I think it's very hard week in and week out to kind of understand and figure out, crack the code of who the wide receiver 2 is on the Packers, because of a lot of the times, it doesn't even matter who the wide receiver 2 is, because Aaron Jones is scoring all the points. Davante Adams is scoring all the points. There's no more Robert Tonyan, so maybe the horizons have been broadened. Maybe we see more Randall Cobb, but right now, I just don't want to trust it, even in this soft matchup up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Next matchup, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers. The Cardinals appear to be without Kyler Murray in this game, and maybe for the next couple of games. Does that mean you should sit DeAndre Hopkins? No, but the upside of DeAndre Hopkins has obviously plummeted. So you're still going to play him because he's great. This motherfucker has scored tons of fantasy points with Tom Savage, Brock Osweiler, with all these bad quarterbacks. So you're going to assume that he's going to play well regardless of who the quarterback is, but the upside is certainly limited. For the 49ers, Deebo Samuel, I believe, was banged up in that game. Doesn't fucking matter. The guy could have one leg. His other leg will hold him up, and is probably his third leg as well, because this guy must have a huge swinging cock based upon how he's played this season. Brandon Ayuk is not that guy. Deebo Samuel is. I expect Deebo Samuel to be very reliable game in and game out, and could easily be the #1 wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers in this game. The other Cardinals wide receivers, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, I just don't really trust any of those guys, even though typically one of them ends up having a good game without Kyler Murray. I just don't really see that happening this week. Next up, we got the LA Titans at the LA Rams. And this one, obviously, you're starting Cooper Kupp every single week. Cooper never fails. He literally never fails. He is inevitable. Game in and game out. All this motherfucker does, you know, DJ Khaled says, all I do is win, 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 no matter what. All Cooper Kupp does is score fantasy points no matter what. Every game. Doesn't matter. The Rams might lose. Cooper Kupp's going to take a dookie on the defense. I expect Cooper Kupp to have a big game up against the Les Titans defense. For Robert Woods, sometimes he has good games, other times not so good, but you're still sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But you're going to want to start Robert Woods every single game because of the upside, because of how good the Rams offense is, and they never really completely phase him out. Just some games, he doesn't find his way into the end zone, and then he has a much more disappointing showing. For the Tennessee Titans, I like A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is clearly back. Derrick Henry not in this game. Seems like Julio Jones is not going to play as well, which even further ups the amount of targets A.J. Brown could get. But Nick, aren't you scared of Jalen Ramsey? A little bit. I'll be honest, I'm scared a little bit. So his upside might be, ticked down a little bit, but he's still so good that you're going to want to play him. And then for the other Rams wide receiver, we got Van Jefferson, who's a super fast, interesting play. Deshaun Jackson has been cut, so that opens the door for even more targets, but not really. But not really, though, right? Because Deshaun Jackson wasn't really involved at all. Just gives you further clarification, further safety when you want to be starting Van Jefferson. This week, I could see you wanting to do it in a deeper league, but in most situations, I would leave Van Jefferson on the bench. Final game here, the Chicago Bears at the Pittsburgh Steelers. In this one, we're to be firing up both of the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers, Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool has kind of been a pretty big disappointment this season. Deontay Johnson pays off game in and game out. You're obviously going to play him up against a not-so-hot Bears defense. Without Juju Smith-Schuster, though, it is a lot easier to rely on Chase Claypool and feel a little bit safer when starting him. Plus, the matchup is just too good up against the Bears, so I'm going to have to play him. And then for the Bears, Allen Robinson doesn't get traded, which feels bad. It's sad because I thought he was going to get traded. Maybe he'd be on to new horizons. He'd be great on a new team, but he's stuck. He's stuck in this shitty offense. The offense started finally clicking because Matt Nagy wasn't there. But once Matt Nagy's back this week, you better believe they're going to go back to being a garbage-ass offense. The Bears are a laughing stock. Don't play Allen Robinson. Just cut the motherfucker. Just cut him. I was wrong about him. I'll admit. The guy produced with Mitchell Trubisky. The guy produced with 9-inch Nick Foles. The guy produced with Blake Bortles, but he can't get it done with the Bears this year. Fuck it. Just don't play him or just cut him. Darnell, here comes the Mooney. Well, he has one of my favorite nicknames that I make for these players. Don't want to be starting him. The Steelers' defense is tough, and the Bears' offense just isn't good. So sit down both of the Bears wide receivers. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like on today's video as well. I love each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, complete.